The champagne glass caught the light as my husband raised it, his lips curling into the smile I used to trust. But instead of toasting our daughter's graduation, the words he spoke shattered 28 years of my life in a single breath. I've decided to start a new life without you. The room froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Laughter died in throats, and I could feel 50 pairs of eyes stabbing into me, waiting for the tears, the shriek, the collapse. But none of that came. Instead, I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of something sharper, colder. It was the smile of a woman who had seen this betrayal coming and had already prepared her answer. I slipped my hand into my purse, pulled out a cream-colored envelope and placed it by his plate. "Something for you to read later," I told him, steady as stone. Then I kissed my daughter on the cheek, told her how proud I was, and walked out of the restaurant as though my entire world hadn't just cracked open. I am Bianca Caldwell, 54 years old, and I had spent nearly 3 decades perfecting the role of the dutiful wife and mother. I set aside my own dreams to raise our daughter Amelia and to support Gregory through every failed venture, every midlife reinvention, every reckless investment he dressed up as ambition. I worked longer hours when he quit jobs. I stretched our money when he squandered it, and I smiled through it all, believing sacrifice was the price of love. But 3 months ago, I found the first signs: the missing money, the transfers to an account I didn't recognize. I'd managed our finances for decades, so the discrepancies glared at me like fresh bruises. And then came the text messages I discovered on his unlocked phone, promises to her plans for their new life. Words that painted me as the obstacle he was finally ready to break free from. He was meticulous in planning his grand escape, even timing his announcement for Amelia's graduation, believing I wouldn't dare cause a scene on her day. What Gregory never realized was that I was planning too. I was tracing his money trails, consulting attorneys, gathering evidence. And in that very envelope, I placed beside his glass, I had tucked the weapon he'd forgotten about: the prenup. The one he had insisted on so many years ago, when I had more to protect than he did. The prenup with a fidelity clause. The clause that would strip him of nearly everything he thought he could take with him. As I stepped into the scorching Augusta sunlight, I heard the restaurant door slam behind me, and Gregory's frantic voice break through the air. He had opened the envelope. He had seen, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't the one caught unprepared. He was. I drove home to the house he had already promised his mistress Cassandra in text messages he never thought I'd read. The same Cassandra who had once smiled at me across my Christmas table, who had called me for career advice, who now sat smugly in the back of that restaurant waiting for her prize. I walked through the quiet rooms of the house, noting his suitcases already packed, hidden in the back of the closet, ready for his dramatic exit the following day. Predictable. Always so predictable. The truth is, I had already filed for divorce that morning, hours before his announcement. The papers were safe in the court's records, inaccessible to him until the hearing. I had frozen the accounts he didn't know I could touch. I had traced every transfer he thought was invisible. For weeks, I carried the crushing knowledge of his betrayal alone, shielding Amelia so she could focus on her final semester. She would be furious that I hadn't told her sooner, but someday she would understand. When Gregory finally stormed into the house that evening, red-faced and shaking with fury, I was waiting. He waved the envelope like a weapon, shouting about betrayal, about how the prenup expired years ago. And I smiled, calm, deliberate, merciless, as I told him the truth: it hadn't. The clause remained in effect for the duration of the marriage. His face drained of color when he realized the trap he had built with his own signature. The prenup he once wielded for protection had become the blade that cut him down. He sputtered, he pleaded, he accused me of cruelty. He even tried to dangle history in front of me: those 28 years, the trips, the anniversaries, the shared tragedies. And for a brief moment, my heart twinged. Because I remembered too. I remembered the man I had once loved. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the humiliation he planned for me in front of family and friends. That was not weakness, that was calculation. And so was my answer. When he tried to twist it into a mistake, I played him the recordings, his own voice planning my humiliation, mocking my trust. Cassandra's voice laughing at how I had no idea about the money. He went pale. He went quiet, and in that silence I found my strength. I told him he had until tomorrow to take his things. After that, the locks would change. He tried one last time to use Amelia as his shield, asking if I had thought about how this would hurt her. Rage cracked through my calm, then because of course I had thought of her. Every day. Every night. She was the reason I had stayed silent until after her graduation. She was the reason I was standing strong now. That night, as I packed a small bag and drove to Diana's, his sister's house, I felt something I hadn't in years: freedom. The kind that burned in my lungs like fire, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Diana embraced me without hesitation, already knowing the truth, already ready to take my side. And when Amelia came to us, still in her graduation dress, tears streaming down her face, I finally told her everything. Her anger toward her father was volcanic, her loyalty to me unwavering. She said she couldn't even look at him right now. And as much as that tore at me, I knew it wasn't mine to fix. Her relationship with him would be hers to decide. For once, I was done carrying the burden for everyone else. But when the doorbell rang and Diana's face turned troubled as she said, "It's Gregory, and he's not alone," I knew the battle was only beginning. Gregory stepped into Diana's living room, like a storm, Cassandra clinging to his side with the uneasy air of someone who already sensed the ground beneath her was crumbling. He came armed with fury, demanding that I be rational, that I unfreeze the accounts as if reason was suddenly a tool he had any right to invoke. I didn't rise from the sofa. I didn't need to. Amelia, my daughter. His daughter stood before me like a shield. Her shoulders squared in a way I had never seen before. Her voice trembled with rage as she reminded him exactly what he had done: destroyed our family in front of everyone on her graduation day, lied about money, while she worked 2 jobs to pay for textbooks, treated her mother like a disposable inconvenience. Gregory blustered, denied, tried to shift the narrative like he always did. But for once, no one in the room was buying his version of events. Cassandra shifted uncomfortably when Amelia turned to her, asking if she had known the truth that Gregory had planned his big announcement in public that he was bleeding our accounts dry behind our backs. Cassandra admitted haltingly that she thought it would be private, that she hadn't signed up for this. Gregory shot her a look that could have cut glass, and in that moment I saw the first crack in their supposed love story. She wasn't the perfect accomplice he had built her up to be. She was just another pawn in his game, and she was beginning to realize it. Diana, sharp and unflinching, told them both to leave. For years, I had been the peacemaker, smoothing over Gregory's outbursts, covering his tracks, protecting Amelia from the worst of his flaws. But that night, as I sat quietly with my sister-in-law and my daughter, I knew that role was over. Gregory could call me cold, vindictive, heartless. He could try to rewrite history to make himself the victim, but I wasn't smoothing edges anymore. The preliminary hearing came quickly on a rainy Tuesday morning. Gregory arrived with a lawyer barely out of law school, a corporate attorney with no grasp of family law. He thought charm and bravado could bend a courtroom the way they once bent me. He was wrong. The judge reviewed the prenup, her sharp eyes lingering on the fidelity clause. She confirmed its validity, confirmed that the assets he had tried to siphon away were frozen, confirmed that the house and the savings would remain in my possession until the full hearing. Gregory muttered outrageous under his breath, loud enough for the whole room to hear. The judge silenced him with a single look that stripped away whatever swagger he had left. And when she set the next hearing date for 30 days later, his shoulders slumped. It was the first time I had seen him truly small, not just angry or manipulative, but powerless. Friends started to call after that, some offering sympathy, others fishing for gossip. I kept my answers short, dignified, controlled. Gregory and I are separating. These things happen. Meanwhile, his perfect facade cracked wider. Word spread. His reputation as the charming, successful family man collapsed under the weight of reality. Cassandra, I learned from Diana, began to waver. She hadn't signed up for a man with frozen accounts and looming court battles, and soon enough she walked out, leaving Gregory with little more than his outrage and his debts. While his carefully spun web unraveled, I was quietly rebuilding. I rented a small office downtown, just enough space to launch the consultancy I had dreamed about for years. Women began to find me, women in the midst of divorce, women widowed, two young women standing at the edge of financial uncertainty. I helped them read the fine print, trace the money trails, reclaim the futures they thought they'd lost. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just someone's wife or mother. I was myself. And the work gave me a satisfaction no paycheck at Truvanta Corp ever had. Amelia came by often in those first few weeks, balancing her new job with her desire to check on me. She would sit across from me, eyes shining with pride, and say, "Mom, you're helping people in ways they don't even know they need. You're giving them strength when they feel weakest." I would smile and tell her I was only doing what I wished someone had done for me sooner. But even in those quiet victories, the shadows of what Gregory had done lingered. I'd lie awake at night, replaying those moments at the restaurant, his smug smile, the way he thought humiliation would silence me. And each time I felt again that sharp reminder betrayal cuts deepest, not because of the act itself, but because of who delivers it. I had loved him. I had trusted him, and for years I had convinced myself that was enough. Yet as the days stretched toward the final hearing, I began to feel something I hadn't expected, a strange, heavy calm. Gregory was unraveling. Cassandra was gone. His business faltered without my quiet support. And still he tried calls, texts, desperate pleas in courthouse hallways. "We built this life together, Bianca. Doesn't that count for something?" he said one morning, his voice stripped of arrogance. "It counted," I told him, "until you decided it didn't." And I walked away, my heels echoing against the cold marble floor, each step a declaration that I was done carrying him. But endings, I was learning, are never clean. They are jagged, messy, and full of echoes. And as the final hearing drew closer, I knew this story wasn't just about revenge. It was about something far more dangerous and far more necessary: reinvention. The final hearing landed cruelly poetic on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. I dressed in quiet dignity that morning, a navy dress and a steady resolve, while the weight of nearly 3 decades pressed against my chest. Gregory arrived looking gaunt, his eyes ringed with exhaustion, the confident man I had once followed through every whim now reduced to a shadow propped up by a nervous young lawyer. The judge wasted little time. She reviewed the prenup once more, confirmed the evidence of his financial deception, and upheld every clause. The house remained mine. The retirement accounts remained mine. 70% of the investments fell under my name. Gregory was left with his personal possessions, a struggling business, and the dwindling sum in his private account. It was more mercy than he deserved, but far less than he had planned for when he first imagined his future with Cassandra. When the gavel came down, I felt something loosen inside me, not joy, not triumph, but release. For so long I had lived with the suffocating weight of betrayal, the ache of carrying appearances for Amelia's sake, the quiet rage of being underestimated. And in that single ruling, I wasn't vindictive. I was free. Outside the courtroom, Gregory approached me one last time. His voice had lost the edge of anger, replaced with something I hadn't heard in years: sincerity. "I made a terrible mistake," he whispered, his hands trembling. "Is there any chance we could—" "No," I interrupted gently but firmly. "That door is closed." His eyes dropped, and for the first time I believed he understood. He nodded quietly and said the one truth that might have mattered years ago. "You deserve happiness, Bianca." 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, sunlight pouring across the desk where contracts and financial statements were neatly stacked. Caldwell Financial Transitions had grown beyond what I'd dreamed in those dark days. I had hired 2 associates, women as passionate as I was about helping others reclaim their futures. My clients came to me with trembling hands and tear-stained faces, but they left with plans, with power, with hope. And in each of them, I saw a reflection of who I had once been and who I refused to become again. Amelia visited often, bringing flowers or stories from her job in Charleston. She'd sit across from me, her eyes filled with admiration I never thought I'd see directed at me. "You know what's ironic?" she said one afternoon, sipping coffee as she looked around my office. If Dad had just been honest, if he hadn't schemed, he might have kept half of everything. I smiled a quiet, weary smile. Sometimes people can't see past what they want in the moment, and it costs them everything. Gregory had faded into the background of our lives. His business faltered without my guidance. Cassandra had long since moved on, trading her illusions for someone else's promises. And though Amelia still carried the sting of his betrayal, I reminded her often, he's still your father. What you choose to do with that relationship is yours, not mine. Some wounds were hers to heal, not mine to dictate. 2. At night, when the house was quiet, I would walk through the rooms, past the photographs that no longer haunted me, past the clock that ticked away the years I once thought were wasted. But I knew better now. They weren't wasted. They were lessons. They were scars that became armor. They were the price I paid to finally step into myself. That envelope I placed by Gregory's plate wasn't just the beginning of his downfall, it was the beginning of my rebirth. For years, I defined myself as his wife, as Amelia's mother, as the woman who sacrificed so others could shine. Now I was the woman who reclaimed her voice, who built something from ashes, who chose not just survival, but strength. And so to anyone listening, anyone who has ever felt betrayed, discarded, or silenced, know this. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying the one who hurt you, it's in rebuilding yourself so completely that they no longer have power over your story. If my journey resonates with you, I invite you to share yours. Like this story, leave a comment, subscribe if you want more truths that cut deep and heal even deeper. Together we remind each other that betrayal may wound us, but it never defines us unless we let it.